Welcome to our program, Vermont Women. I'm your host, Althea Kroger. Each week, Vermont Women explores an issue of special interest to the women of Vermont. Our guests are experts in their field, highly qualified to enlighten us not only on the issues as they stand today, but what the future might hold. And today I'm very pleased to welcome as our guest Eileen Hawe, who is the president of Insight, Inc., which is a company in which she runs, which advises and consults clients on their investment needs. Welcome to our show, Eileen.
Thank you.
As you know, I was very pleased to meet you when you were in the legislature during the 1994 legislature, talking about some of the issues you care about. And at that point in time, I was very interested because of my work in Guns and Schools on investing in MACE.
That's right.
And MACE is a Vermont company based in Bennington, and you're going to help me do that.
I sure am.
What can I do with my $50? How many stocks could I buy? I'm looking forward to it. First time. So it's great to have you on the show, and I know you're in a very different field, very different from what people usually think about when they think about investment brokers.
That's right.
And so it'll be fun to pick your brain and find out exactly what you do. But before that, let's talk a bit about yourself, where you come from, and what brought you to Vermont.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in New York City. I'm the oldest of 7 children. I was married to my husband, who was in corporate finance, and he got tired of the rat race, and we came to Vermont to buy a business. So we came up back about 1980 with our 3 children.
What are their names?
Matt, who is a chemical engineer in Southern California. Bart is a student at UVM and a real entrepreneur. And Carrie, who is a junior in college and now studying in Ireland this semester.
Okay. So you came up to Vermont to buy a business, and
Right.
that didn't work out. What happened next?
Right. Well, my husband became involved with another company, and he worked for them for quite a while. And then what happens is our marriage fell apart, and I had to go out and find a job at that point, and was hired as a receptionist at Merrill Lynch and worked my way up. I was a receptionist, then a sales assistant, then a broker's assistant. Left Merrill Lynch and was hired as a broker at Dean Witter, where I spent a little over 4 years.
Tell me, do you have a background, an academic background in investing and finance? Are you one of those girls that could add, or
No,
the
not
teacher's
really.
spot could add?
Actually, my strongest point is teaching. I reduce a very complicated matter to simplest terms. And what I found was, I have a degree in a master's in education, but what I found was that when as a broker, I was calling women and explaining investments to them, they really didn't know what I was talking about. And so when I gave seminars and workshops to the various women's organizations, I was immediately pleased with the results, because they said, aha, you finally broke it down where I can understand it. So the more response to that I got, I really felt strongly that educating women around personal finance was going to be one of my goals.
Great. Now, maybe this is a good time to talk about exactly what you do, because you're not really a broker.
No,
I mean, you're not what
at all.
people think. You don't sell a product.
No.
Okay, so talk about your profession then.
Althea, that's what makes me unique. I don't sell anything. I consider myself an educator and a counselor. I work with women. I work with couples. Many times I'm the third piece in that triangle. I work with groups. I give talks about business to businesses, to where they want to provide something for their employees. And what makes me unique is that I don't sell a product. I get paid by the hour, a set fee. And,
what is that fee, if you don't mind?
At this moment, I charge $60 an hour,
okay,
which I have been told is quite reasonable for my expertise. And having been a broker and having been an educator, I really focus on the important pieces of what investments are appropriate for the individual or for the couple, and the best way of getting the value for their money.
Okay, and so anyone can call you, and if they're interested in making a investment decision.
That's right.
And you spend time with them and explain the whole panorama of,
exactly,
and help them to decide based on their special needs.
That's
whatever
right.
that might be. Now, I know you do work especially with women, or you have a special interest, certainly,
special interest with women.
Do women have special needs that need to be addressed as investors?
Very much so. Many times it's a period of transition where they've either lost their spouse, or they're in the midst of a divorce, or maybe they're taking early retirement. There are opportunities there that money will come to them, and if they're not sure about what to do with it, then they have to have, I would say, an impartial person give them guidance. Walking into a broker or an insurance agent is not a wrong thing to do, but many times it's very difficult to know if they're selling you something because it's the right investment for you, or if they're selling you something because it's going to provide a commission or an income for them. It's a fine line that these people walk.
Tell me, when you think about the various clients you've had, do women want to invest in different things than men do? I mean, is there a women's perspective in terms of the kinds of investments?
Well, I don't think it's so much invest in different things. I think everybody knows that we can only work so many hours a day, and I have to make my money work harder for me. But women have different needs, and some of those needs might be, women are more let's say, risk-aversive. Men are willing to jump in a little higher, a little deeper than women. But women have very good attributes. They're very willing to do homework. They're very willing to do the research, to listen, to ask questions, and they're very willing to ask for help. And to me, that makes women a very much more thoughtful, intelligent investor. One of the tools that I use for helping women in investments is I've started 6 investment clubs in the state of Vermont. I have one in Brattleboro, 2 in Montpelier, and 3 here. And what happens is, and I also have held the first annual Vermont Investment Club meeting last April down in Randolph, and we'll have another one coming up this year, just to bring the hands-on experience of learning how to use money, learning the terminology. Women have not been taught the terminology of investments, and when you don't know the language, you're not sure what you're dealing with.
Now, what do you mean by club? You started clubs. What's a club?
An investment club is a group of people who gets together with the primary objective is education. Secondary is to make money, where they write up an agreement. They have certain parameters within which they work. They investigate and research different stocks, and then as a group, they vote, they invest. They typically give they can put in anywhere from $25 a month to $100 a month. So it's not a huge investment, but the club buys certain stocks. You watch the portfolio build, and over time, hopefully, you'll make some money.
And who handles the portfolio? Whoever broker they choose?
Right, they can choose a broker. Sometimes they do it themselves through dividend reinvestment plans, but everything that the club does is done either by consensus or majority rule.
Tell me, have more women become investors? I mean, you know, as a woman in politics, I hear lots about the changing role of women and going into non-traditional kinds of fields, and you know, women, because of the divorce rate, having to go out and work and just having access to many more dollars to invest than they did in the old days when the male was the primary or only breadwinner and had control over the money. That's right.
No, that's absolutely correct. What we found is about in the last 20 years that due to inheritance and death of the spouse, women probably had or held 75% of the money in the United States.
Even in the old days?
Even in the old days, but managed only about 25 to 35% of it. In other words, they handed over the money management to their lawyer, their accountant, their son-in-law. What we're finding today is women are much more interested. They're much more eager to get into it. And again, this is where an investment club comes in and gives them that kind of experience. They read an awful lot. They are, yes, very much more into managing their own money. Again, divorce settlements has brought many women to realize that they have to take care of it themselves. Inheritance from their parents' death gives women this money that they realize that, you know, they can handle it. They're smart enough.
Good. As long as they've got educators and to help.
That's right. That's right.
It's not the kind of thing that I was naturally taught in school.
No,
when I was going to school.
It's a big gap in our education process for both men and women, and it's a real shame.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about investing in Vermont in general? What's going on? Obviously, you are working not just in Chittenden County and Burlington, although that's home for you.
That's right.
But, you know, Montpelier and Brattleboro.
Right.
What's happening in investing in Vermont? It's something that legislators such as myself are interested in, just because that's part of the economic development that we're all worrying about now, because resources and revenues are so low.
Well, there are several things that are happening, and it's not just Vermont, but nationwide. As interest rates have come down over the last few years, people are looking for higher yields on their money, and consequently jumping into mutual funds and stocks.
As opposed to the CDs.
The CDs, which were so safe and backed by FDIC. So it's very important for people to realize the risk that's involved there. The other piece is that a couple of new companies have come out with initial public offerings, IPOs. Vermonters were rather irate when they couldn't get enough shares of the Vermont Teddy Bear Company. And then Seventh Generation came out with a new offering. So there are several companies in Vermont going public, and Vermonters like to own a piece of Vermont.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The other piece is Vermont municipal bonds. Vermont municipal bonds are double tax exempt. That means you pay no federal income tax, and you pay no Vermont tax on it. So it's a wonderful investment if you're in the higher tax brackets and need a good yield. Vermont bonds have a AA rating, which has been wonderful for us, because when you have when your ratings go lower, that means that the risk increases, and that means that the state of Vermont has to pay a higher rate of interest, pay out more money on those bonds. Well, by keeping a AA rating, the highest is a AAA. By keeping a AA rating, it means that we have to pay a minimum amount of interest on our bonds, which is very cost effective for the state of Vermont in our lending processes.
Yeah, we think a lot in the legislature. Bonding, and Vermont bonds go out to, pay for all the institutions that we need to build. You know, the kinds of expenses that have a long lifespan, and selling those bonds allows your investors to help.
That's right.
Help Vermont and get a good rate of return.
That's right.
As well. Good.
Nationwide, Vermont bonds are highly regarded. Because,
why? Yeah, it's interesting.
There's something special about Vermont. I mean, we all know that in agricultural products, if it says Vermont on it, other people want to buy it, and that's a good feeling. But Vermont has an excellent history on their bonds. They've never defaulted on a bond. And once a Vermont issue goes national, it's picked up very, very quickly. In fact, sometimes it's hard for Vermonters to get those bonds.
I wanted to ask you a bit about socially responsible investing. It's an issue that comes up a lot, because it's a sense in which, in terms of investing, people should look at more than the bottom line.
That's right.
Or at least they should understand there are other variables to use in deciding what to invest in. When you counsel and educate people, do you talk about that?
Oh, very much so. Very much. What has been happening over the last few years is that people are becoming aware of where their money goes and want their money to be consistent with their values. And I have some clients who won't buy U.S. Treasuries because of the questions about money going to defense. They feel very strongly about that. Where you see socially responsible investing is different criteria. For a while there, people were not investing in South Africa. Money was not being invested in defense, in tobacco, or alcohol. Those are proactive ways of looking at socially responsible investing. There are what we call, those are rather reactive. Proactive ways are looking more towards the positive. The companies who really comply and go out of their way in environmental protection. Companies
that are really good to their employees. Those
exactly.
Kinds of variables.
They have daycare, or they have family care. Companies that promote minority and women. Companies that not only have good hiring practices about minorities and women, but also have management. They're also what they give back to the community. So these are very positive aspects that people look for. I want my money to make money, but I also want to feel good about what it's doing.
Tell me, is the rate of return less when you throw in a socially responsible criteria?
Sometimes it is, and right now it might seem that way, but the positive way of looking at it is companies that have good community relations, employer relations, will keep those people, will keep the community happy. And those companies that are very active about not breaking environmental protection laws will have fewer legal liabilities. So down the road, I think the payoff is going to be more visible than it is now.
Good. I want to talk a bit about those companies, maybe nonprofit organizations, that you would consider socially responsible within Vermont. But first, I'd like to welcome all of you who have joined us since the show began. I'm Althea Kroger, your host. This is Vermont Women. And today we're talking to Eileen Hawe, who is the president of Insight Incorporated. And she is an investment educator and consultant. Eileen, what are some of those companies that you would advise or educate your clients to invest in, specifically because they are socially responsible, both nationwide and Vermont?
Well, I'd rather not give specific names about companies. I think it's important for the individual to really feel what points they feel strongly about, and see which ones would fill that criteria. What I do know is that I have clients who come to me looking for alternative investments, not necessarily buying stocks and bonds, which we ordinarily see as investments, but looking to participate in money that really will go back into the community. Something like the credit union in the north end of Burlington, where all the deposits go right back into building up that community, or the Vermont Community Loan Fund, where they'll pay a low rate of interest, but the people who are interested in giving that money for the loans are not really concerned about how much they're going to make on their money, but how good they can feel about the money going back into Vermont.
Great. Are your clients institutions as well as individuals? I mean, for instance, institutions such as St. Michael's College or UVM that do have, monies to invest as part of running the education system.
Well, I talk to anyone who needs guidance around money and money management and investing. I might not have all the answers, but I have a wonderful network which I can refer people. Institutions, businesses bring me in most of the time to educate their employees around money management or investing. If they have a 401k plan that the business is involved in, and maybe the employees aren't 100% sure what it's all about, I'll come in and give them a program on that.
Okay, so you do advise
Very
employees
much so.
in institutions.
Very much so.
Let's talk a bit about the broadest sense of investing in the economy and the relationship between the business community in Vermont and government, the legislature. In Montpelier, we hear lots about Vermont not being hospitable to business, and that we've got to do something about that because we're losing business. People aren't investing in businesses here. People aren't enlarging their businesses. What's your sense of that?
Well, I have a sense that Vermont is a wonderful place to live. In fact, there was an article in the Free Press recently about a police officer from New York City coming up and visiting a police officer in Rutland, and how they use the same skills but very differently. The environment here is certainly wonderful for micro-enterprise, for new ideas, for foods, specialty foods and things. And so I don't think Vermont is not friendly. I think it might have gotten the image because of Act 250 and everyone couldn't get the permit that they wanted
as quickly as they wanted.
But I think that in the long run, people moved here, or people come here for a special reason, and I think it's very important to preserve those reasons and not just make us a suburb of Boston or New York City.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. It's one we don't hear as often in Montpelier as I think we should.
That's right.
At least we're trying to encourage business and make sure that they feel comfortable and that government is listening to their specific needs.
Well, that's the one thing that I've heard over and over again, that the legislature, the public officials are very accessible in Vermont, that you could write a letter and get a response. You could get someone on the telephone within a few minutes or a few hours, whereas in the larger states where most of my family lives outside of New York City, they don't even try. It's useless.
It's interesting. Yeah, we are accessible. People don't realize how easy it is to affect legislation.
Very much so.
because we're so small.
And be heard.
And be heard.
That's right.
Let's talk about the legislature and the kinds of issues that are cropping up there that you care about. I do know that there is a bill in the House Commerce Committee that deals very specifically with investing.
That's right.
And I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about that and maybe share that pinup you have to give people an idea of maybe the problem out there and
That's
what
right.
the bill attempts to address.
Well, what has happened over the past few months is we've had some very interesting headlines in the paper, and I think that the legislature is very conscious of these and want to provide an investment advisor registry. Vermont is probably...
Let me just, if I could, read these, because you can't see them from behind. You need a translator for latest sales pitch, claims mount against lawyer, state suspends security dealer, relying on a referral for an expert could be hazardous to your wealth, and regulators want investors to get data earlier. So the problem, in a nutshell, is the buyer should beware.
Very much so. And my point of view is that it's very difficult to cheat an educated consumer. So where I feel I come in is critical about educating people around finances, giving them the language, giving them the terminology, helping them to know what questions they should ask and where they should go with those questions. But the Investment Advisor Act will provide a registry of all investment advisors. Vermont is one of the few states, I think there are 46 states, that register investment advisors. Anyone could hang out a shingle right now in Vermont. What the bill will provide is an opportunity for the state to review applications. If ever anyone has infractions against them or claims against them as an investment advisor, they will not be able to be registered in the state of Vermont. The funds from the registration will go towards the enforcement. One piece that I'd like to see is some funds going towards consumer education, because if we had a hotline...
And where are the funds coming from?
The registration. Each investment advisor will pay an annual fee of about $250.
I see.
And so what happens is, I think it's important, too, that people are aware there is a process, that if they have a complaint, that there is already a process in place at the Banking, Insurance, and Securities Commission, and that if they have inquiries, that definitely to call Montpelier and get answers to their questions.
But, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, but obviously you support the bill, but you would like more education as a component. You know.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
Because it's very important. What we cannot stop is the phone calls. We can stop someone from putting an ad in the paper. We can stop someone from, coming up with a sort of a shady investment, but we cannot stop the phone ringing in someone's living room and that deal going on, nor can we stop some of the things that come through the mail. I know once they're caught, they can be stopped, but and then what I find is that many investors are either embarrassed by the fact that they were taken and consequently don't want to pose a complaint because they feel stupid.
My time is almost up. I did want to ask you, you obviously are enthused and energetic about your work. Before closing, what are the lows and the highs of doing what you do, which is counseling people on how to invest their monies?
Well, to me, the high is just the enthusiasm that I see people have at the end of our session, where they'll say, this was wonderful, this is something that I always needed. The lows that I find, it makes me really sad to see so many people overextended because of credit cards. They, to me, are a big detriment in our society and help people lose perspective as to how to handle their money. So
now, wait a minute, this is a big surprise. Would you get rid of all credit cards?
What happens is people, instead of planning ahead and saving for that vacation or starting a Christmas club and saving for next December's gifts, just keep using their credit card, and then before they know it, they've got $5, $6, I mean, I have people coming to me with $20,000 and $40,000 worth of debt saying to me, how do I get out from under?
So that's, I'd forgotten, that's the other thing you do. Not only do you counsel people on investing in money they have, but helping people get out of the debt.
Money management skills.
Money management. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. It goes fast.
Doesn't it?
Keep up the energy and enthusiasm. Good luck to you. And for those viewers out there that are interested in exploring this, know how to reach you.
Thanks, Althea.
Thank you. And thank you as well for joining us today on Vermont Women. Give us a call, drop us a line if you have any questions at all on today's programming, any suggestions about future programming. See you next week.